Part 55. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 541. Because there was still a young prince to take care of in the Dajhan palace, and Xianyuan Yao and Xiejin were here to take care of it, Xianyuan 11 quickly turned around and walked out of the imperial study and returned to the Dajhan palace. Your Highness, the eldest princess Yunya frowned. How is the situation in the imperial study? Xianyuan 11 glanced at Hao, who was still sleeping, turned around and walked to the outer hall, frowning slightly. It doesn't seem good. Yanyu and Yanshuang's expressions changed slightly. Before the regent left, he arranged for elites to defend themselves from the front court to the harem. Each level can easily block outside thieves, Chu Hong'ai said in a calm voice, so it should be impossible for people outside the palace to sneak in. The assassination was carried out in the imperial study room. Xianyuan 11 frowned and said, you mean it was done by people in the palace? Even if they are not from the palace, there must be people from the palace who cooperate with each other inside and outside, Chu Hong'ai said. The assassin's purpose of sneaking into the imperial study cannot be just to assassinate Xianyuan Chen and eunuch Zhangjian. Xianyuan Chen, a mere 6th grade official and a concubine of the Prince of Wei, was not worthy of taking such a huge risk to assassinate him. And the palm print eunuch? Chu Hong'ai's pupils narrowed slightly, and her eyebrows knitted together unconsciously. The incident happened suddenly, and everyone in the palace became nervous. Even if she could ensure the safety of the Dajhan palace, she did not dare to leave without authorization at this time to check the situation. Don't be afraid of 10,000, just be afraid of what happens. It's okay to infiltrate the assassin in the imperial study room, but there must be no mistakes in the Taizhung palace. Chu Hong'ai stood in front of the window, looking at the rows of palaces and pavilions in the distance, her eyebrows darkening. At the same time, Xiejin, who stayed in the imperial study, said the same thing after the eldest princess left. Even if someone in the palace didn't do it, it definitely has something to do with some people in the palace. The palace, no one outside has such a great ability to sneak in and assassinate without being discovered. Xie Xiaofu turned to him and asked, do you know what's going on in your heart? I'm not 100% sure. I won't doubt anyone, Xiejin said calmly. When we have the answer, it's useless for anyone to plead for mercy. Xie Xiaofu was silent for a moment after hearing this, but he didn't ask any more questions. Chu Nanyi arrived faster than he expected. Led by the man in black, Chu Nanyi hurried into the imperial study. He only glanced at the injuries of the palm eunuch and Xianyuan Chen, and he knew in his heart, the imperial doctor can go out. His tone was too casual as if he was giving orders to his own servants. It immediately made several imperial doctors present look angry, but it was only thanks to Xie Xiaofu that they endured it. You guys, please go back and rest, Xie Xiaofu spoke calmly and said to Xiejin, is this place left to you? Xiejin nodded. Several imperial doctors wanted to say something, but they saw that Xie Xiaofu had already made a gesture, turned around and walked out first. The imperial doctors glanced at Chu Nanyi, then turned to look at Xiejin and Xianyuan Yao. Their expressions were really not very good, but after thinking about it, they felt that there was no need to be angry. Although Chu Nanyi was just a concubine of the Chu family, he was called in by Xiejin. He would later diagnose and treat the eunuch Zhangyin and Xianyuan Chen. If the cause could not be cured, then he would have to bear all the responsibility. The injuries of these two people were not serious, but the symptoms were really strange. It was difficult to say whether they could be cured in the end. The doctors were not sure, so they could just abandon their responsibility. Thinking of this, he immediately lifted his feet and left the imperial study room easily. Xie Xiaofu went out and ordered people to count the corpses of the death guards, confirm their identities, and have people notify their families to take back the corpses, and distribute the pension money according to the rules. After settling in properly, he went to deal with his own affairs, leaving the whole place to Xiejin. If I don't come, these two people will never wake up again. Chu Nanyi motioned to Xiejin to close the door, and asked the man in black who had just been ordered to leave the palace to guard the outside of the royal study and not allow anyone to approach. From now on, judging from the injuries on these two people, they were not caused by a peerless master. If they were really masters, they would have died on the spot. How could they expect me to use my medical skills here? On the contrary, the injuries on these two people were not fatal at all. Obviously the murderer wanted their lives, so he stabbed them with sword after sword. However, this may be the reason why the palm print eunuch and Xian Yuanchen hurriedly avoided during the assassination. The murderer, it didn't hurt their vitals. Xiejin had noticed this early on, so he said it couldn't possibly be the work of a master who infiltrated outside the palace. Can it be cured? It can be cured. Chu Nanyi squatted down. The injury is not serious, and the medicine in the body is not fatal, but when a person is infected with this medicine and is injured and bleeds, he will be in a coma and look like a normal person. They are so drowsy that people think they can wake up, but as long as the treatment time is delayed for one night, they will never wake up. Xian Yuanyao frowned. What kind of medicine is so strange? It makes the blood all over the body coagulate little by little, until the whole body is cold and there is no more warmth. Chu Nanyi said calmly, the juice of the purple flower can do it. Xiejin walked to a chair aside and sat down, watching silently as Chu Nanyi performed acupuncture on the two of them neatly, with a cold look on his delicate and noble eyebrows. I want to kill people and silence them, but in the end I just want to do it. If you are not careful, you will lose everything in the end. Chu Nan didn't even raise his head. Are you confident? We are inseparable. Xiejin raised the corners of his lips slightly, and the arc was so cold that he said, even my assassination case can be settled. You guessed the murderer so quickly. Xian Yuanyao looked at him in surprise. Who is it? Xiejin glanced at him quietly. Xian Yuanyao frowned. What are you looking at? It's nothing. Xiejin smiled casually. I just thought that when I just entered the palace, Yao Yao said in a hurry that he would send troops to help me find the jade seal. I was inexplicably moved and felt very grateful. Xiejin, shut up. Xian Yuan scolded him coldly. How long has it been and you are still so poor? Master Xieju is so confident that he dares to be so poor. Chu Nanyi said calmly, but I advise you to restrain yourself. No matter how quickly the case is investigated and how well the errand is done, it doesn't matter how fast the case is investigated or how well the job is done. The lives of those people outside have been taken care of here. When the Lord comes back, you can figure out how to explain it. As soon as these words came out, the imperial study room instantly fell into silence. Xian Yuanyao frowned unconsciously. It's really difficult. I'll give up this body of bones and skin and let the Lord handle it. Xiejin held his chin and sighed sadly. The path of a powerful minister is really not easy to walk. There are thorns everywhere. If you don't pay attention, you will be covered with bruises. It is impossible to prevent it. Xian Yuanyao glanced at him, his brows furrowed with worry. You were not willing to be poisoned and injured, and it was not intentional. The Lord will not blame you. He knows this better than anyone else, but he doesn't have enough confidence to say this. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 542. When he entered the palace just now, he thought that the jade seal was just lost, and the top priority was to find it back. Unexpectedly, a guard was also killed. The most important thing right now is to find the jade seal. However, even if it is repaired in time and the jade seal is successfully recovered, what will happen to the dead people? It's no joke that several lives were lost just like that. Xian Yuanyao knew Rong Yu's temperament very well, so even though he comforted Xiejin, he knew in his heart that this matter was not that easy to deal with. Thinking like this, Xian Yuanyao couldn't help but get angry. When the murderer is found, he must be cut into pieces, otherwise he will be sorry for these guards who lost their lives. It would be great if you had the ability to bring the dead back to life. Xian Yuanyao lowered his eyes and watched quietly as Chu Nanyi administered acupuncture to Xian Yuanchen and the palm print eunuch. This man's acupuncture skills were excellent, and there seemed to be no symptoms that a few silver needles could not solve. As he looked at it, he couldn't help but speak, "Is the silver needle omnipotent? Why is it so powerful?" As soon as he said this, Xiejin laughed out loud. "Yao Yao is so cute." Xian Yuanyao raised his head and stared at him displeased. The antidote is applied to the silver needles. The corners of Xiejin's lips curled up. It was rare that he could smile heartily at this time, but Nanyi's acupuncture method is indeed good. A box of silver needles has traveled all over the world, leaving many doctors behind. Xian Yuanyao said nothing. He thought that Xiejin seemed to be in good physical condition at this time, and he could still laugh, which meant that he already had an idea in his mind. The identity of the assassin and the whereabouts of the jade seal should be found out soon. Of course, it is impossible to bring back the dead. Xiejin raised his lips and smiled. "Are Yao Yao worried about me?" Xian Yuanyao's heart skipped a beat and he subconsciously retorted, "I'm worried about myself." Xiejin's expression paused, and he couldn't help but frown. He didn't know what he thought of, and sighed softly. "Anyway, my health has improved now. Yao Yao, please go back to the military camp as soon as possible. You don't have to worry about things here." He knew that Xian Yuanyao meant what he said, but these words reminded him that if he continued to keep Xian Yuanyao by his side, there would be no way to explain these things after Rong Yu came back. The crime +1 was a light one, and he didn't want Xian Yuanyao to suffer the same consequences. Implicated. The delay in the military training plan in the past few days is not too serious. As long as Xian Yuanyao returns to the military camp and is completely separated from the affairs in the palace, he should not be held accountable. Xian Yuanyao frowned after hearing this. "I will naturally go back when the case is cleared up, and you won't be able to stop me even if you want." Prince Yao Chu Nanyi said calmly, "You'd better listen to Master Zhu and go back to the military camp as soon as possible. It's a dereliction of duty if something goes wrong in the palace, but it's not too serious in nature, and Xiejin is only a 5th grade man. Officer, when the time comes for the regent to be punished, Commander Yang will be the first to bear the brunt." As he said that, Chu Nanyi raised his eyes and looked at him. "If you, a general, neglect your duties, no one can take responsibility for you." Xian Yuanyao remained silent. Xiejin is indeed a 5th rank official, but his 5th rank official is different from other 5th rank officials. Xian Yuanyao is very aware of Rong Yu's harshness and ruthlessness in treating his own people. Even if Commander Yang takes most of the responsibility as the commander of the Forbidden Army, he must bear most of the responsibility for his poor protection. But Commander Yang was derelict of duty at best. Whether he was demoted, fined, or even given a beating, that was all he needed to do. The regent would never put any more thought into him. But Xiejin was different. Xian Yuanyao could imagine that Xiejin's leisurely and comfortable life was about to come to an end. There was a sound of footsteps outside. The Supreme Emperor heard about the incident in the imperial study and sent Xiejin to ask questions. Xian Yuanyao came back to his senses and turned to look at the closed door. "Mr. Xie is treating Mr. Chen and Mr. Zhang Yin. He can't leave for the time being." The voice of the man in black standing outside was calm and did not sound respectful at all. The messenger looked worried. "Whose subordinate are you? Do you dare to disobey the emperor's order?" Xiejin lazily held his chin, ignoring the noise outside, and said calmly, "When will they wake up?" "It will take another 2 hours." Chu Nanyi lowered his head and worked. "You must not leave at this time. If another assassin comes and takes advantage of the situation, I will not be able to protect myself at the same time. Protect these 2 people." Xiejin sneered and sat on the chair calmly, as content as staying at home. Xian Yuanyao looked around the imperial study room, and suddenly thought of something. He turned to look at Xiejin. "Ajin, did you find anything strange?" Have you discovered anything? Xiejin raised his eyebrows and looked at him. Tell me about it. Xian Yuanyao said, my lord has deployed heavy troops in the Dajhan Palace, and the defense of the imperial study room and the important areas of the former dynasty is not sloppy. It is more rigorous than when my lord was in the palace. This assassin successfully sneaked into the imperial study room no matter what method he used, but when he stabbed eunuch Zhang and Xian Yuanchen, they didn't make a sound. What were the guards outside doing at that time? Xiejin's lips turned into a smile. Continue. The assassin seemed to want to silence him, but in the end Xian Yuanchen and the palm print eunuch did not die. This proves that he left in a hurry. Since he left in such a hurry, someone outside must have discovered the abnormality in the imperial study room. The assassin had to escape earlier. Xian Yuanyao thought for a while, but if he escapes like this, how can the guards not find him? Xiejin nodded slowly. That's right. And those guards outside, how did they die? Xian Yuanyao frowned. Did they die first, and then the assassin came in to assassinate Xian Yuanchen and steal the jade seal, or did they steal the jade seal first and kill them before they left in a hurry? How many people? If it's the latter, it's even more strange. The assassin couldn't even kill Xian Yuanchen, so how could he kill those guards so cleanly? The corners of Xiejin's lips curled up, and his eyes were full of smiles. Yao Yao is so smart, is there anything else? Xian Yuanyao glared at him dissatisfied. When you talk to him seriously, can you look a little serious? Another point is that even if you move the tiger away from the mountain, you can only remove the imperial guards from the imperial study. However, no matter where the assassin comes from, the palace is so big that there will be no obstacles on the way to the imperial study. In other words, it's impossible that no one saw the assassin. Chu Nanyi said slowly. In short, there are too many suspicious things about this matter. It is easy to investigate and there is no challenge at all. That's why Xiejin can sit here now, leisurely watching him treat people with acupuncture instead of hurriedly looking for clues. Xiehu knew the doubts that Xian Yuanyao had in mind when he entered the imperial study room. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 543. When it was getting dark, Xian Yuanchen and the palm eunuch both woke up. The people sent by the Supreme Emperor were in a stalemate outside for a long time, but the man in black next to Xiejin was enough to make him return without success. After Xian Yuanchen woke up, his eyes were filled with mist, and it took him a long time to feel the pain and weakness all over his body. For a moment, he didn't even know where he was, his mind went blank, and he completely forgot what happened before. Until a familiar voice sounded in my ears, "Are you awake?" Xian Yuanchen came back to his senses instantly, and when he sat up, he realized that he was lying on the ground. Yes, when Chu Nanyi performed the acupuncture on him and the palm eunuch, he never thought of placing them in a more comfortable place. There was no bed in the imperial study, only a separate dragon couch for the emperor to rest temporarily when he was tired from dealing with the affairs of the court. Since it is a dragon couch, naturally only the emperor can use it. Although no one has used it since the queen ascended the throne, and the regent has no habit of resting in the cubicle, after all, not everyone can use the imperial things. Xian Yuanchen endured the severe pain all over his body, and his face, which was pale due to heavy blood loss, looked a little confused. However, soon, the scenes before he fell into coma appeared in front of him, and his face suddenly changed in shock. Someone stole the jade. Xian Yuanchen Xiejin's elegant and deep voice sounded, with a faint cold breath. Did Xian Yuanyan come here this morning? Xian Yuanchen's expression changed, and his body froze instantly. A groan sounded. The palm print eunuch opened his eyes and climbed up with difficulty. He looked up and saw Xiejin sitting in the chair. His expression paused for a moment, obviously he still hadn't realized where he was. When he stood up from the ground, he clearly felt the sharp pain coming from his body. When he saw the blood on Xian Yuanchen's body, he remembered what happened before, and, the jade seal disappeared from his hand. His face immediately turned pale. Master Zhangjian seems to have remembered everything. Xiejin smiled faintly. Chu Nanyi's medical skills are indeed good, and he did not disappoint me. Chu Nanyi curled his lips, raised his hands to move his wrists that were sluggish after working for more than 2 hours, bent down and rubbed his knees and calves, and then started to pack the silver needle medicine box. I'll leave this to you, Chu Nanyi said in a calm tone. This quack doctor's mission has been completed. These two are fine. Have a good rest tonight, drink more water, and don't need to take medicine. After a pause, his eyes fell on the palm print eunuch. My father-in-law's injuries are more serious. Although they are not fatal, it is best to rest more in the next few days. After all, sword wounds are not minor, and the regent is not unreasonable. People will understand you. The palm print eunuch's face was pale and he had lost his jade seal. It was too late to be frightened at this moment, so how could he have the heart to pity his own injuries? Chu Nanyi turned around and walked out. However, as soon as he opened the door of the royal study, he saw King Wei and his wife coming in a hurry. Chu Nanyi raised his eyebrows and looked back at Xiejin. The king of Wei and his wife are here to care about their son. As soon as these words came out, Xiejin's expression did not change, but Xian Yuanchen's expression changed instantly. Close the door after you go out, Xiejin ordered. Ming Yan, no one is allowed to approach the imperial study. Ming Yan was the man in black who was able to control everything. Although he didn't say anything after hearing this, he had already accepted Xiejin's order. If Suan Yuanyan is threatening you not to speak out because of concubine Jiao's safety, then I unfortunately tell you that if you don't tell the truth today, I will let you see concubine Jiao's body early tomorrow morning. If Xiejin was like the sun when he protected Xian Yuanchen and concubine Jiao in the past, and his warmth made Xian Yuanchen feel at ease and grateful for it, then Xiejin when King Pio threatened to interrogate him now was like the smiling king of hell. Making people scared to the core, and deeply convinced that his threat is definitely more than just a threat. The blood on Xian Yuanchen's face instantly faded, becoming as pale as paper. Xian Yuanyao watched from the side and couldn't help but marvel. Xie Fox is indeed Xie Fox. Not only is he good at catching clues, but he also knows how to grasp the opponent's 7-inch vital point. Without too many useless tricks, he can push someone to the edge of the cliff with just one move, leaving him with no other choice. But apart from that, Xian Yuanyao really admired him for being able to determine the identity of the person behind the theft of the jade seal calmly, and he was indeed a good candidate for future powerful ministers. Bold, King Wei shouted angrily, my king's son was seriously injured in an assassination, and I and the princess came to check on his injuries, but you dared to stop him? Which battalion of guards are you from? Let your superior come over. Ming Yan stood expressionless outside the imperial study, turning a deaf ear to King Wei's furious questioning. In the imperial study, Xiejin smiled casually, I think the king of Wei and his wife are here to silence them. What do you think, Mr. Chen? Xian Yuanchen was silent for a moment and had already adjusted his mentality. 9 masters are kind to you. No, Xiejin raised his hand, although I used to put on airs in front of you, now that you and I are working in the imperial study and work for the regent, this kind of respect is no longer necessary. I just want your attitude. Xian Yuanchen nodded, it's not Xian Yuanyan. The person who snatched the jade seal was a masked man who was wearing the clothes of a palace servant and had practiced martial arts. He originally said that he wanted to use the jade seal on the order of the Supreme Emperor. When the palm master heard this, he subconsciously I was about to take out the jade seal to him, but I stopped him. Unexpectedly, the man suddenly got into trouble and struck me with my sword. Then the imperial study was in chaos. The seal-holding eunuch saw the other party chopping with a sword, realized that something was wrong, and hurriedly wanted to hide the jade seal, but he didn't expect that the man was like crazy, slashing and stabbing at the two of them. The seal-holding eunuch was chased and slashed several times by the man because he had the jade seal in his hand, so he was injured more seriously. Xian Yuan Chen got the chance, opened the door of the imperial study and shouted, but before the guards rushed in, he saw the seal-holding eunuch kicked to the ground, and the man snatched the jade seal and went to the inner room. Xian Yuan Chen was about to chase him in a hurry, but he saw Xian Yuan Yan behind the screen in the inner room. When the masked man got the jade seal, Xian Yuan Yan looked at Xian Yuan Chen with cold eyes, as if he wanted to kill him, but soon there was a mess of footsteps outside, and the guards came hurriedly. Xian Yuan Yan and the masked man did not dare to stay any longer, and turned around and left in a hurry. Xian Yuan Chen wanted to shout, but he felt dizzy and then lost consciousness. He was not very clear about what happened afterwards. So, Xian Yuan Yan and the masked man did not leave the imperial study, but escaped from the imperial study. Xiejin smiled faintly. What about the guards who died outside? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 544. Is there a guard dead in the imperial study room? Xian Yuan Chen's pale face showed solemnity, but he slowly shook his head. I really don't know this. When I opened the door, I didn't see any killed guards outside. Xiejin turned to look at the palm eunuch. Father-in-law, is there anything you want to add? The palm print eunuch's face was 3 points paler than Xian Yuan Chen's. Firstly, it was because of his serious injury, and secondly, because of the fear in his heart. Hearing Xiejin's question, a hint of fear appeared on his face, and he said in a low voice, I know the figure of that masked man. Xiejin raised his eyebrows. It's not the chambermaid, it's Nanny Wei who is beside the Queen Mother. When the Queen Mother was still the Queen, she was responsible for serving the Queen Mother and teaching the palace maids. Palm print father-in-law said, Mama Wei is a bit skilled and can do things more neatly than ordinary mothers and chambermaids so. His voice lowered unconsciously, and he obviously had some scruples. If this move has anything to do with the Queen Mother, then she is the most suitable person to do it. Firstly, she is the most trusted by the Queen Mother and will not leak the news. Secondly, she will not easily arouse suspicion. No wonder it was successfully succeeded in the palace. Xian Yuanyao sneered. It turns out that even the Supreme Emperor and the Empress Dowager participated in the plan. Xiejin said calmly, not necessarily. Xian Yuanyao was surprised. He was about to say, isn't it already obvious? However, when I thought about it, his imperial grandfather had been the emperor for decades after all. There had been some turmoil in the palace because of Princess Yingfeng's return to Dongling. Now that the queen has ascended the throne, the court has finally calmed down. Now that he has stepped down to take care of his old age, it is indeed unlikely that he will create any more trouble with his own hands. So, there is actually a hidden secret here? The old slave used to serve the emperor, the Supreme Emperor, for many years. The Supreme Emperor was very majestic. When the old slave heard that the Supreme Emperor wanted to use the jade seal, he habitually took out the jade seal without thinking too much. The palm print eunuch explained uneasily, the old slave has no other ideas, please be careful. After the queen ascended the throne, the regent took power, and the number of chamberlains around him was very small. Whether it was the eunuch who held the seal or the eunuch who wrote the writing, their status was not as good as before when they served the Supreme Emperor, and their power was also much weakened. However, no one dared to give birth to a child. Dissatisfied. Even if they have not personally experienced the methods of the regent, they still know something about it. Moreover, once the emperor and his courtiers abdicate, it is lucky that these old people in the palace are still alive and well. Who dares to be dissatisfied? So he had to serve with trepidation in the first place, but this time he committed such a mistake. The palm-printing father-in-law was afraid that his life would be in danger, So how could he dare to hide anything? Xiejin nodded casually when he heard this, but didn't ask any more questions. Hearing that the Supreme Emperor wanted to use the Jade Seal, he subconsciously took it out. This made sense. After all, after serving the Supreme Emperor for decades, the deep-seated pressure in his heart was difficult to eradicate for a while. It was normal to habitually obey the will. As for the others, Xian Yuan Chen and the Palm Eunuch were both victims in this matter. Although they had their own responsibilities, they were not forbidden soldiers or martial arts masters. They could not be forced to risk their lives to protect the Jade Seal in dangerous situations. Now that we have almost understood the situation inside the Imperial Study Room, it is time to understand the situation outside the Imperial Study Room. Xiejin stood up and flicked his robe sleeve slowly. You two go back and rest first. Recuperate for the past 2 days. When the case is concluded, you can come back to the Imperial Study Room for duty. With that said, he walked over and opened the door of the Imperial Study. Outside, King Wei, who was shouting angrily at Nether Nightmare, suddenly stopped talking. The expression on his green and white face was condensed, and he stared gloomily at the man who came out of the Imperial Study. Xiejin. Your Majesty, please go back to rest first, and Eunuch Zhangjian will also go back to rest, Xiejin said calmly, with a hint of laziness. Don't worry about being silenced. I can guarantee that this mistake in the palace will only happen once, and it will not happen again. King Wei's expression changed, especially when he saw Xian Yuan Chen and the palm print eunuch walking out of the Imperial Study. His pupils suddenly shrank, and his face suddenly became as gloomy as water. Xiejin, what do you mean? Princess Wei asked. Are you trying to stop the prince from caring about his son? Care about your son? Xiejin hooked his lips and smiled lowly. Your Majesty has not cared about me for a long time, but he has cared about Ah Chen at this time. He is really a loving father. King Wei's face suddenly turned the color of pig liver. Xiejin, you are so presumptuous. Please forgive me, Your Majesty. Xiejin bowed slightly, with a somewhat cynical tone. I still have to investigate the case, and I don't have much time to waste words with Your Majesty. I hope Your Majesty will not embarrass me. King Wei stared at Xian Yuan Chen, who was intact, with a sinister luster in his eyes. After a moment, he said seriously, Chen, are you done with today's work? Can you go back to the palace for dinner tonight? We, father and son, haven't seen each other for a long time. Let's sit down and have dinner together. Xian Yuan Chen narrowed his eyes and said, Thank you for your kindness, father. Perhaps Aiken hasn't spent time with my aunt for a long time. I want to have dinner with her tonight. King Wei's face darkened, and he stared at his face for a moment, trying to see something from his face. However, looking over and over, he could only see his eyes closed and respectful posture, and there was no other expression. Revealed. In broad daylight, a thief actually dared to sneak into the royal study and assassinate him. He is so lawless and daring. King Wei stepped forward and pretended to check Xian Yuan Chen's injuries. Has Chen seen the true face of the assassin? Xiejin raised his hand to block his movement. It is the duty of the lower official to investigate the case, so I won't trouble the prince. The king of Wei took a deep breath, staring at Xiejin with a look that looked as if he wanted to shoot out a poisoned knife and stab the damned Xie family to death on the spot. Xiejin smiled and bowed, and soon left with Xian Yuan Chen and the eunuch in charge of the seal. His graceful and flowing posture had fascinated many unmarried girls in the imperial capital, and also made the prostitutes in the brothels willing to commit themselves to him without paying a penny. Xian Yuanyao admired the monster in his heart, and then followed him. The face of the Prince of Wei was like ice, and he stared at the few people leaving coldly. In a moment, he turned around and was about to enter the imperial study. However, as soon as he stretched out his hand, before he could touch the door of the imperial study, he was forced to retract his hand by a strong undercurrent, and couldn't help but take 3 steps back. Your Highness, Princess Wei's face changed drastically, and she reached out to support her husband. How are you? King Wei stared coldly at Ming Yan. Do you want to commit a crime? The imperial study is an important place for court affairs. No one can enter without the permission of the regent, Ming Yan said in a cold tone. Please leave here, King Wei and Princess. King Wei looked at him with a sullen face. I just want to go in and see if anything is missing. Ming Yan was unmoved, and didn't say a word more. He stood outside the door like a cold-faced door god, preventing anyone from entering. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 545. Ajin. After he was far away from the imperial study and walked to a place where no one was around, Xian Yuanyao said thoughtfully, is there any secret passage in the imperial study? Xian Yuanyan and that nanny didn't alert anyone. It is a bit unreasonable to appear in the imperial study room under such circumstances. After taking away the jade seal and stabbing Xian Yuanchen and the palm eunuch, the imperial army was alarmed, and yet he was able to escape safely, which is even more difficult for experts to do. Yao Yao is right, Xie Jin nodded casually, but don't worry yet. There is no need to rush to uncover the secrets hidden in the imperial study. I would rather use a trick to catch the turtle in the jar. Xian Yuanyao was silent for a moment. Is the Queen Mother also involved in this matter? It's hard to say whether the Queen Mother is involved in this, but the nanny beside the Queen Mother must be involved, Xie Jin said calmly. It's just that I still have an important issue that I'm still thinking about. What? Right now, it seems that the person who stole the jade seal has been confirmed to be Xian Yuanyan. The King of Wei and his wife are insiders, and the nun next to the Queen Mother is an accomplice. Theft of the jade seal is a crime of treason, and it is reasonable to punish the 9 tribes. Xie Jin frowned. Originally, I planned to retrieve the jade seal before the Lord came back, which would be regarded as a sin. But if I retrieve it quietly, there will be no way to cure Xian Yuanyan. The crime of treason. Hearing this, Xian Yuanyao also fell into silence for a moment. He understood what Xie Jin meant. Conspiracy is a serious crime, a serious crime. Only the king has the right to convict the conspirators. Moreover, the Wei Palace is a member of the royal family and has a high status. Not to mention Xie Jin, even the first-ranking Prime Minister Lu and Xie Xiaofu have no right. Convict King Wei and his son. But if the Prince Regent and Her Majesty the Queen come back to convict them, they must have conclusive witnesses and material evidence, and the jade seal must be temporarily left in Xuan Yuanyan's hands. In this way, the Wei Palace's charges will certainly be confirmed. Thank you. Jin Nang's crime of dereliction of duty in losing the jade seal will also not be concealed. If we find the jade seal now, we can treat it as if this never happened. Xie Jin sighed, but I really want to kill King Wei's family. The jade seal is irrefutable evidence. The only way is to search it from the palace of King Wei. Only by releasing the jade seal can the King of Wei's family never have any chance to stand up again. After all, the assassin was not caught in the assassination. At that time, the King of Wei only had to make a sophistry, accuse him of frame-up, and then ask the Supreme Emperor to intervene. It would be difficult to punish him with death. But Yuxi is different. The crime of treason is a crime that cannot be reversed and no one can plead for mercy. It is a definite death penalty. But in this case, not only will the Lord know that you have neglected your duties, but there is no way to explain the loss of the jade seal. Xian Yuanyao frowned. My lord will probably skin me. Xie Jin smiled bitterly. So Yao Yao, do you think I can still see the sun at this time next year? Xian Yuanyao was silent for a moment, then suddenly looked up at the sky. The night sky was pitch black. At this time next year, there will probably be no Sunday. Xie Jin's mouth twitched. Okay, I'm just joking. Xian Yuanyao also sighed, feeling a little distressed, and then tried to say, how about we just pretend that this never happened, get the jade seal back, and put it back in the hands of the eunuch with the palm print. Told Xian Yuanchen and eunuch Zhangjian not to mention this matter again. It's about their own worth and life. They should keep a good tone, right? Xiejin raised his eyebrows slightly. Yao Yao means that we can hide the truth from the truth. Although I think it may not be possible to hide it. Xian Yuanyao scratched the tip of his nose, but if we hide it together, my lord, maybe we can just pretend that nothing has happened. After a pause, as for killing King Wei's family, there will always be a chance in the future. It's impossible to get yourself involved in order to kill King Wei's family. Xiejin didn't know what to say for a moment. Not far away, palace lanterns had been lit up, illuminating the inner courtyard of the palace with bright lights. The people in the palace seemed to be doing the same as usual, but they were obviously more cautious and uneasy as they came and went in a hurry. The masters hiding in the dark have also entered a state of high alert. Xiejin was silent for a moment and said calmly, Yao Yao wants me to evade my responsibilities. Xian Yuanyao was speechless for a moment. I just want to save your little life. At worst, I will be a good man again in 18 years. Xiejin chuckled. Anyway, I have been destined to live a lonely life. Even if I live a long life and successfully stand at the top of the most powerful minister, what's the point? Happy. No matter how majestic and powerful one is, it's probably not pleasant to be alone. After all, extreme glory and wealth are accompanied by extreme loneliness. It is cold at high places. The higher you stand, the more you can experience the feeling of loneliness and coldness. Xian Yuanyao's heart twisted, and he said in an extremely calm tone, if you have such thoughts, just pack your bags and run away before the Lord comes back. Anyway, you don't care about glory and wealth, and you are the most respected person. It's not unusual. If that's the case, why stay here and wait to be skinned? Wouldn't it be better to live a leisurely life? Xiejin was silent, but he didn't expect this guy to be unmoved. It seems that the bitter meat scheme is not working. Yao Yao, are you willing to go with me? He looked at Xian Yuanyao with burning eyes, full of hope. Let's travel around the world together, herd horses on the grassland, walk across the Kyushu continent, and see all the mountains, rivers, and lakes. I don't want to live the rest of my life being wanted and hunted down. Xian Yuanyao said in a leisurely and calm tone, but I can help you conceal your whereabouts. If the master wants to arrest you, I can also try to ask for your release. Xiejin raised his eyebrows. Yao Yao, this sentence hurts my heart. Can we only share the joys and not the sorrows? I have suffered enough from the master, and I dare not challenge his majesty easily again. Xian Yuanyao is a good boy, but the smile at the corner of his mouth reveals a bit of cunning. You can try to challenge it. After saying this, he turned and walked out of the palace gate, with a straight body, brisk steps, and a sense of leisurely strolling. Well, the waist is particularly thin. Xiejin stared at the back of a certain good boy for a while. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, shook his head, and followed him. This guy. Just relying on the years he stayed with the master, he really started to show off. Arriving at the palace gate, Xiejin gathered all the guards on duty tonight, personally selected reliable people, and issued an order, there is an assassin in the palace. Close the palace gates now. No one is allowed to step out of the palace. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 546. After everything was arranged, Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao left the palace, including the king of Wei and his wife who entered the palace today. Outside the palace gate, Xian Yuanchen, who was one step ahead, was waiting beside the carriage, obviously waiting for Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao to come out. When the two of them also walked towards the carriage, he stepped forward and said, "Nine masters." Xiejin smiled lightly, "Is there anything else?" "The jade seal should still be in the palace," Xian Yuanchen said in a low voice. "My brother often went to the palace to visit the emperor's grandfather during this period, and told the emperor's grandfather that his eldest sister-in-law was pregnant. The emperor's grandfather loved him before, and he heard that he had a great-grandson. It's a joy that I stayed with him for one night yesterday." There was no surprise on Xiejin's face, and he just said calmly when he heard this, "When the Prince Regent and Her Majesty the Queen are in the palace, they never stop any prince or grandson from paying their respects to the Supreme Emperor, but the prerequisite is don't cause chaos in the palace, and don't make plans that you shouldn't have, otherwise even the Supreme Emperor and the Queen Mother won't be able to save them." "That's what Master Ju said." Xian Yuanchen narrowed his eyes. "My brother and that nanny were able to avoid the sight of the palace guards and go straight to the imperial study, and they were able to escape smoothly when the guards discovered them. I think the key point is that they were able to avoid the sight of the imperial guards." "Inside the study?" Xiejin gave him a meaningful look. "Although I have read a lot, I am not stupid from reading. I am not bad, and my brain is flexible enough." Xian Yuanchen pursed his lips and lowered his eyebrows in silence. "Anything else you want to add?" "My brother lived in the palace yesterday and was able to establish a relationship with the grandmother beside the emperor. Obviously, this matter must be related to the emperor's grandmother." Xian Yuanchen's voice became lower and lower. "Please be careful, Master Ju, just in case." "There is no such thing as a chance." Xiejin's voice was light, but he showed an unquestionable aura of chilling. "No one can shake the power of Dongling at this time. Stealing the jade seal is already a capital crime. No one can save them." Xian Yuanchen hummed, "There is one more doubt." "Explain." "Master Ju said that a few of the imperial guards outside the imperial study room have died." Xian Yuanchen frowned slightly. "I don't think this is right at all. Although the masked nun is pretty good at it, she can't still do it when she's running for her life. He was able to go out and kill several people, so there must be someone else who killed the imperial guard. The purpose of the killing was to deliberately create a cover-up for the assassination, which could temporarily cover up the fact that the jade seal was stolen, giving them enough time to hide the jade seal. If Xian Yuanchen and eunuch Zhangjian never wake up, no one will know who sneaked into the imperial study. Xian Yuanyan has always given people the impression of being weak. Even if someone suspects it, it is impossible to suspect him." Xiejin inadvertently turned his head and looked around, and said in a calm voice, "Who do you think this someone else is most likely to be?" "The commander of the imperial guards is responsible for dispatching the entire imperial army." Xian Yuanchen lowered his head and said in a very calm voice, "Without the dispatch of Commander Yang, why would those imperial guards show up in the imperial study room to assassinate and shout a few times before arriving too late?" "But as soon as the incident happened, Commander Yang went to Xie's house and told me the news about the incident in the imperial study." Xiejin smiled lightly, and he did not conceal the fact that the jade seal was stolen. Xian Yuanchen was at a loss for words for a moment and thought deeply. Even if Commander Yang took the initiative to tell the matter, if the palm print master and I can't wake up, does that mean there is no proof of this matter? Commander Yang was removed from suspicion because he took the initiative to report it. Even if Commander Yang took the initiative to report it, failure to do so will result in a maximum penalty of demotion and salary according to the rules, which will have no impact on the lives of him and his family. On the contrary, because of the death of the few guards outside, people directly think that the assassin killed the people while escaping, so they will ignore the secret passage hidden in the imperial study." Xiejinbi looked at Xian Yuanchen thoughtfully for a long time before he raised his lips and smiled with interest. "I can't tell that in addition to his outstanding talent, Mr. Chen also has a flexible mind. The regent really has a sharp eye and didn't let your pearl is covered in dust." Xian Yuanchen was not sure whether this was a compliment or a sarcasm. He didn't know how to respond, so he could only lower his eyes and remain silent. "When the regent returns to the palace, Remember to maintain this attitude in the future, Xiejin said calmly. If you have any doubts or opinions in your heart, you can speak frankly in front of the regent or Her Majesty the Queen, and there is no need to hide it. I still have it. In that case, the regent will not blame you for telling the truth, but will appreciate you for speaking up. The same goes for Master Ju, who appreciates those who speak the truth the most. Xian Yuan Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Aiken understands. Xiejuyi is still the same Xiejuyi, always reminding him of what he should do and what he should not do. He will not be hostile because of his occasional wisdom, nor will he be wary of others' sharp edges. He is broad-minded and tolerant. He may seem to have a bad temper, but he is a trustworthy man. Once you are appreciated by the regent, not only will your career go smoothly, but you will most likely be treated as one of the regent's own in the future. The hard work and training are all to make you stronger. It is normal to protect you at all times. Xiejin reached out and touched him. Abandon the fear and apprehension that you shouldn't have in your heart, face your life calmly, and you will find that the scenery ahead is very beautiful. Probably because his movements were too intimate, Xian Yuan Chen's handsome and elegant face blushed slightly, and he lowered his eyebrows and said respectfully, "Thank you, Master Ju, I will never forget it." Xian Yuanyao stared at Xiejin's irregular paw with no expression. Suddenly he felt itchy and wanted to slap the paw off. In broad daylight, the world is clear. All rules and propriety are gone. If there is nothing else, Aiken will go back to the palace first. Xian Yuan Chen bowed and saluted, and left humbly and gently. Xiejin hummed, put his hands behind his back, and watched him leave without saying a word. If this boy has ambitions, the future powerful minister may not be him or me. Xiejin raised a smile at the corner of his lips. Yao Yao thinks Aiken is smart. Smart, Xian Yuanyao said indifferently, otherwise, how could he be appreciated by Master Ju? As for whether he is smart enough to compete with Xiejin, he did not comment, but one thing is certain, Xian Yuan Chen is definitely not the material for a powerful minister, because his cunning and deepness are far inferior to Xiejin. Xiejin turned to look at him, as if a little surprised. Why does Yao Yao's words sound wrong? Xian Yuanyao glanced at him and turned to get on the carriage. Xiejin followed him into the car, with a suspicious smile on his lips. Is Yao Yao jealous? Xian Yuanyao said coldly, get lost. Don't get angry. Xiejin sat beside him, put his arm around his shoulders, and acted like a brother. Pa. Xian Yuanyao slapped him on the head. Be honest. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 547. Xiejin covered his head with his hands, and his tone contained no emotion or anger. Yao Yao is the first person who dares to hit me on the head. What? Xian Yuanyao narrowed his eyes slightly and raised a hint of provocation at the corner of his mouth. Does Master Ju want to punish me? I don't dare. Xiejin put his arm around his shoulders. Yao Yao can hit him anytime, any way he wants. I just like Yao Yao hitting me. Xian Yuanyao looked at him as if he was crazy. Do you like being beaten? Xiejin corrected, I like being beaten by Yao Yao. That's really a shame. Xian Yuanyao said coldly, choose a time another day, and I'll let you experience the feeling of being beaten. You need to choose a good day to hit someone. Xiejin Danfeng raised her eyebrows. I thought the only time to choose a day is to get married and have a bridal chamber. Bang. Xian Yuanyao punched him on the chin. Go aside. Xiejin was in pain and couldn't help but mutter, Yao Yao is so cruel. Am I ruthless? Xian Yuanyao glared at him. When the Lord comes back, you will know who is ruthless. Xiejin was silent for a moment, then sighed and slowly sat up straight. Yao Yao, can you please me for a little while? always pouring cold water on him when he is in a good mood and ruining the atmosphere. Xian Yuanyao seemed to want to say something, but in the end he just frowned and said nothing. He really couldn't maintain a good mood like Xiejin, but it was useless to say anything now. The only business was to make amends as soon as possible. The carriage drove outside the gate of Xie's house. Xiejin got off the car and was about to walk to the house. When he turned around, he saw Xian Yuanyao standing still. He couldn't help but wonder, what's wrong? I won't go in. Xian Yuanyao hesitated for a moment. I think your body is fine. Shouldn't we avoid suspicion? He thought of what Xiejin had said before, that the Lord had warned him to be careful. At present, Xiejin has been charged with dereliction of duty. If the two of them again cause dissatisfaction to their master because of their secret exchanges and close interactions, there will be no explanation at that time. Xiejin was silent for a moment. Yao Yao, do you believe me? Xian Yuanyao's eyes fell on his face. What do you mean? I will shoulder all the responsibilities for dereliction of duty. Xiejin's expression was rarely so serious. Yao Yao stayed in Jinyuan for a few days to take care of my injury, and happened to encounter an assassin appearing in the palace. So I discussed the details of the investigation with me, and I think the Lord can understand why the training was delayed. As for the rest, all mistakes, dereliction of duty and dereliction of duty are his sole responsibility and have nothing to do with anyone else. After hearing what he said, Xian Yuanyao's expression became calmer. Do you think I broke off the relationship with you because I was afraid of taking responsibility? No. Xiejin chuckled. I know Yao Yao is worried about me and doesn't want me to get more guilty, but I want Yao Yao to stay. Even if I have to face some unpleasant things because of this, I will willingly. Xian Yuanyao said nothing. He thought of what Chu Nanyi said, that they should stay rational, their feelings and responsibilities must be clearly divided, and they should not miss business because of feelings. Although he is still not sure what his attitude towards Xiejin is, since he knows that the Lord does not like them messing around, he should not distinguish between public and private at this juncture, otherwise he will not even be qualified to fight for it. How can you have the confidence to negotiate terms if you are wearing a sinful body? The theft of the jade seal cannot be fooled by a few words, let alone the lives of those people. If Xiejin was just an ordinary 5th grade official, the regent would never convict him of this incident, because there were too many people who needed to bear the responsibility, and it would never be his turn. But Xiejin is not just a 5th grade official. He can even mobilize the imperial army. Although he holds the rank of 5th rank official, the power secretly given to him by his master is not comparable to that of 1st rank Xie Chief Assistant and Prime Minister Liu. As the saying goes, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. Xian Yuanyao knew that for this trust, which was more important than Mount Tai, the price that had to be paid was also heavy. Even if the Lord has not returned yet, we should not do anything to add fuel to the fire at this time. After a moment of silence, he said, I will accompany you to settle this case. You'd better restrain yourself from the rest. Try to restrain yourself first. Xiejin thought about his words, his heart moved slightly, and he couldn't help but have some hope. Although Xian Yuanyao's reaction in the past 2 days was enough to prove that he actually had himself in his heart, these words that seemed vaguely like a promise still made him feel happy. Understanding the uneasiness in his heart, Xiejin didn't want to add too much worry to him, so he had to suppress his desire first and nodded slowly, okay. Xian Yuanyao pursed his lips lightly and walked into Xie's house with him. It is actually not difficult to investigate the case. Even if the emperor and the queen mother were involved, Xiejin would not have any scruples. He walked into the study with Xian Yuanyao, closed the door, and the two discussed it for about an hour. When the servants of the Xie family came over to invite the two of them to dinner, it was already getting late, and it was already past dinner time. It was pitch dark outside, with only a few lights illuminating this night that was destined to be unusual. Commander Yang came to Xie's house again. Master Zhu. Xiejin stopped and turned to look at him. Why are you here again? Although he told the imperial guards not to allow anyone to leave the palace, Commander Yang was the commander of the imperial army and had the responsibility of patrolling inside and outside the palace, so he was not within the scope of restrictions. I heard from my humble position that the imperial guard had sealed the palace gate and said that no one was allowed to enter or leave. Commander Yang looked unhappy and felt that his power had been divided. The king of Wei and the princess heard that something happened to Mr. Chen at noon, so they hurried in. Gong checks the situation. Master Zhu wants to trap them all in the palace. He did not expect that there were some people in the Forbidden Army who listened to Xiejin, and when his orders conflicted with Xiejin's, those people turned a deaf ear to his words. Nothing like this has ever happened before. Commander Yang showed respect to Xiejin, partly because of Xia's first assistant, and partly because Xiejin was now on duty beside the regent. But the respectful attitude does not mean that his power should be taken away. Since King Wei and the princess came to see Xianyuan Chen, why didn't King Wei and his wife leave with him when Mr. Chen left the palace? One can understand. Commander Yang's face changed slightly. King Wei was about to leave the palace, but his carriage was blocked at the inner city gate. He has already lost his temper. If the emperor is alerted, I'm afraid things will get worse. Xiejin smiled, his brows and eyes sparkling, and he said, "It's just right, then let the Supreme Emperor participate in the investigation. The regent and Her Majesty the Queen are not in the palace, and the Supreme Emperor is also responsible for maintaining order in the palace." Commander Yang's expression suddenly changed, and he was speechless for a moment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 548. Xiejin said calmly, "Commander Yang hasn't had dinner yet. Do you want to eat with us?" Commander Yang glanced at him. His eyes were already gloomy, but he did not dare to be too dissatisfied. "I still have responsibilities, Master Zhu will use them with caution." After saying that, he turned around and left. He knew that there was no point in going down any further. Xiejin had always said that since he was determined to seal the palace gate, King Wei would not be able to leave the palace tonight. It doesn't matter that King Wei can't leave the palace. The worst he can do is stay in the palace for one night, but... Commander Yang thought of the deep and terrifying plan of the ninth master of the Xia family, and for a moment he felt a chill running down his spine, and his heart was shrouded in deep uneasiness. Xiejin glanced at his back, didn't say anything, turned around and walked towards Jinyuan dining hall. "Yao Yao, eat more." Xiejin served Xianyuan Yao some food. "I've worked hard on you these past 2 days." Xianyuan Yao was a military general, and he never paid attention to exquisite meals. He was used to eating big pot meals with the soldiers in the military camp. At this time, being treated so warmly by Xiejin, he was a little uncomfortable for a while. Especially with the dozen or so dishes on the table, it was impossible for 2 people to finish them all. Xianyuan Yao couldn't help but frowned. 2 people need to prepare so many dishes? Do you know that during the war, the border soldiers often faced a shortage of food and grass? When there was a food shortage, the soldiers could only eat 2 meals a day. Even a meal? Not to mention whole grains, you can even count the grains of rice in the porridge, but you waste it like this dash. Yao Yao, the corner of Xiejin's mouth twitched, and he was almost convinced by this guy who made a scene. "I was wrong, I must pay attention next time." Xianyuan Yao was cut off by him before he finished speaking. He was speechless for a moment and said calmly, "Food is life-saving for soldiers and should not be wasted." Xiejin obediently agreed. "I know that Xia's family is prominent and wealthy. You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth and are used to rich clothes and fine food." Xianyuan Yao softened his tone. "I'm not saying that you must be frugal, but eating for 2 people, I think 4 dishes are enough, both meat and vegetables, as long as they are enough to eat. Waste is not advisable." Xiejin didn't expect that he would have to be taught a lesson just after dinner, and the lesson was so righteous that he could not refute it at all. who would have let him fall into the hands of this little leopard? Yes, he nodded in agreement. I have written down everything Yao Yao said. I will remember it in the future and don't waste food. Seeing his attitude, Xian Yuanyao felt embarrassed and scratched the tip of his nose. Just don't bother me. It's not annoying. Xie Jin smiled. This is how ordinary wives teach their husbands. I think it's very sweet. Xian Yuanyao frowned. How an ordinary daughter-in-law teaches her husband, what does it have to do with you? You dash. Seeing the smile on Xiehu's lips, Xian Yuanyao reacted suddenly and stared at Xie Jin fiercely. Take advantage of me again. If he hadn't just taught someone not to waste food, he would have picked up the bowl of porridge in front of him and put it on Xie Jin's head. Xie Jin shook his head and denied, no. Xian Yuanyao snorted coldly, it's not certain who is whose wife. Xie Jin was startled, then pursed his lips and smiled. Yao Yao wants me to be his wife, and I am willing. Xian Yuanyao's face was sullen, his eyes fell on the fox's handsome eyebrows, and he was flustered for a moment, with his heart pounding wildly. Are you still going to eat? He said coldly. If you don't eat, take it all out and throw it away. Yao Yao just said not to waste food. Xie Jin sighed, I think we should eat all of this. You eat so much at night, are you a pig? Xian Yuanyao glanced at the dozen or so dishes on the table. You can eat them all if you can. I will tire you monster to death. If you kill 100 people in one go, you can still avoid being hurt. Bitter. Xie Jin sighed softly. Going around and around this topic again, it was obvious that he was really worried. Xie Jin couldn't help but blame himself. He shouldn't be allowed to bear such a psychological burden. The little leopard was too upright, and could not tolerate sand in his eyes. He shared the joys and sorrows with the soldiers in the military camp and enjoyed the same treatment. He even returned the fruits and melons he gave him privately without moving. He was too soft-hearted. He knew clearly that he should stay away from this fox, but he was always worried about his injuries and would not hesitate to put aside important military affairs for this purpose. But it is true that he is timid in front of the Lord. This timidity is originally based on the premise of trust and awe, and has a deep-rooted fear. Therefore, no matter how optimistic and calm Xie Jin is, Xian Yuanyao's hidden worries and uneasiness always exist. For the first time in his life, Xie Jin experienced heartache and self-blame. He realized that he shouldn't let things fall into the situation because of his own selfishness. The psychological burden on little leopard was too heavy. Emotional matters can be done step by step, and there will be many opportunities in the future, but now that the mistake has been made, they have no way out, and things that should not have happened, and there is no way to remedy them. And the culprit that caused all this. Xie Jin narrowed his eyes, a cold and chilling light flashed across his eyes, but his face remained calm, and he even took another piece of fresh fish fillet to Xian Yuanyao without hesitation. Xian Yuanyao looked at the extra fish fillets in his bowl and was silent for a moment. He didn't say anything more, lowered his head and started eating. Only when you are full can you have the energy to work. The two of them had just discussed in the Imperial study room for an hour and decided to arrest the assassin first. They would imprison Wei Wei and Xian Yuanyan in the prison of the Ministry of Punishment. What Mama and Xian Yuanyan did, as long as this testimony exists, Xian Yuanyan must stay in prison. As for how to catch Xian Yuanyan, it was easy for Xie Jin. After dinner, the two of them entered the palace together and prepared to work all night. They didn't even have the patience to wait until tomorrow morning. This time, the two of them did not go to the Imperial study room. As soon as they entered the palace, they met the carriage of King Wei and his wife. After checking and simply letting it go, they took the 40 carefully selected guards and went to the Supreme Emperor and his wife. Go to Yong'an Palace where the Queen Mother lives? King Wei, who was originally furious because he could not leave the palace, began to hesitate when the carriage arrived outside the palace gate, with obvious anxiety on his face. Why are they entering the palace at this time? Commander Yang, the Imperial Army should not obey your deployment. Really? Why can a mere 5th rank member of the Xie family take part in politics and make the Imperial Army obey their orders? Commander Yang's expression was stiff. The regent should have made arrangements before leaving. The regent doesn't trust you, King Wei said with a cold face. When my father was in power, Commander Yang was the most respected by my father. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 549. In fact, wrong, you did not distrust Commander Yang. The original Imperial Guards did obey Commander Yang's orders, but Nan 11 had only been on the throne for a short time. Wrong, you spent most of his mind on government affairs and had no energy to test the loyalty of the Imperial Guards. However, the responsibilities of the Imperial Guards were very special. It was too important to allow any mistakes, so Wrong, you asked Xie Xiaofu to place some trustworthy people in the Forbidden Army. If Xie Jin is a fox, then Xie Xiaoxu is an old fox. He is the first assistant, and his relationship with the regent is simply a monarch-subject relationship. He cannot be too close or too distant, but he knows that his son Xie Jin has the respect and trust of the regent. Therefore, the people he placed were all loyal and reliable, and they were all people Xie Jin could mobilize. These people occupy a very important position in the Forbidden Army. They usually remain anonymous. Once something uncontrollable happens, they are the main force of the Forbidden Army and are only deployed by Xie Jin. If Commander Yang behaves properly and performs his duties well, no one will replace him as commander. The only difference between people is whether they can understand some truths. The palace was brightly lit. The most noble place in the world is bustling and dazzling as far as the eye can see. After the emperor abdicated the throne, he became leisurely and moved to Yang'an Palace to take care of his old age. Although he lived in the same palace with the Queen Mother and the Dowager concubine, there were many palaces in Yang'an Palace, and everyone lived in one. On weekdays, they could get together and talk when they wanted to. After a meal, when you want to be quiet, you can stay alone in the palace to read books and sip tea, and your life can be considered leisurely. The concubines who have been in intrigues for decades, those who were lucky enough to survive, are now old, and there is no need to fight anymore. After the change of throne, it is a blessing to be able to enjoy their old age peacefully. But this peace is finally going to be broken today. Xie Jin and Xian Yuanyao, the Supreme Emperor, who was about to take a rest, heard the report from the manager beside him. He turned his head and looked at him, frowning. It's so late, what are they doing here? It seems that something happened in the palace. The old steward lowered his head. Master, do you want to see me? The Supreme Emperor pondered for a moment. When you come to Yang'an Palace at night, the matter must be serious. Can you do it without me? As he spoke, he put the robe he had just taken off back on his body and said calmly, open the palace door and let them in. Yes. A slight dull sound sounded, and the closed palace door of Yang'an Palace was opened. The guards holding palace lanterns walked in front at night. Xie Jin and Xian Yuanyao walked towards the light, a rich and handsome noble son, and a handsome and beautiful young man. With outstanding appearance and extraordinary bearing, he is undoubtedly a dazzling and beautiful scenery at this night. The Supreme Emperor stood in front of the palace, looking at these two outstanding young people. His eyebrows were solemn, and the majesty he had accumulated over the years for the emperor was still there. At this time, he just looked at them without saying a word. My grandson is here to see the emperor's grandfather. Xian Yuanyao, straight in his brocade clothes, knelt on one knee and said, please greet the emperor's grandfather. I see the Supreme Emperor. Xie Jin lifted his robe and kneeled on one knee in the same posture. He was neither humble nor arrogant. With a flowing grace, I would like to pay my respects to the Supreme Emperor. The Supreme Emperor stood in front of the palace steps, watching the respectful gestures of the two people, and said in a calm tone, "No need to be polite." Xian Yuanyao and Xie Jin stood up. "Why are you coming to Yong'an Palace so late?" The Supreme Emperor raised his eyes slightly and landed on the 2 rows of imperial guards guarding the palace gate. His tone was low. "Are you planning to besiege the palace?" "Your Majesty, please forgive me," Xian Yuanyao respectfully reported. "There was an incident in the royal study. Several guards were killed. The palm-printing father-in-law and Mr. Chen, who had just become Tanhua, were stabbed." Xie Jin was temporarily in charge of the imperial palace on the order of the regent. He is in charge of the study, so he has the responsibility to investigate the assassin. When the Supreme Emperor heard this, his expression changed. "What did you say?" Xie Jin didn't say anything, and quietly observed the Supreme Emperor's expression. His expression was profound and unpredictable. "My grandson dare not lie." Xian Yuanyao lowered his eyebrows and stated again, and said, "We found out that the murderer entered Yong'an Palace, that's why we came so late to disturb him. I hope the Emperor's grandfather will forgive me." The Emperor's expression suddenly changed. "Impossible." Xie Jin felt that his expression did not look like he was faking it, but the Emperor had been the Emperor for so many years and had long been accustomed to keeping his emotions and anger hidden. The shock on the surface did not necessarily mean that he was unaware of anything. Of course, Xie Jin actually believed that the Supreme Emperor really knew nothing. "We have conclusive evidence to prove it." Xian Yuanyao's tone was always respectful. "I hope the Emperor's grandfather will understand." The Supreme Emperor looked solemn and expressionlessly turned to look at the old manager beside him. The old manager shook his head, indicating that he didn't know anything. The Supreme Emperor had a sullen face and suddenly thought of Xian Yuanyan. Ever since the incident between Xian Yuanyan and Fang Lanyi happened years ago, the Supreme Emperor has not seen the King Wei's family for a long time. Starting from the end of last month, Xian Yuanyan came to the palace to pay his respects. His attitude changed a lot from before. He was so obedient and submissive. After greeting him, he took the initiative. She shared with him the good news that Fang was pregnant. The Supreme Emperor was originally angry with him, but when he heard that he had a great-grandson, he couldn't help but feel a little soft-hearted, and then he became somewhat kind to Xian Yuanyan. After that, Xian Yuanyan came to the palace from time to time to accompany him, and the grandfather and grandson sometimes played chess. Xian Yuanyan was good at tea, and the tea he made for him was just right for him. Gradually, the emperor became more and more friendly towards him. He even stayed here for the night last night. He didn't see Xian Yuanyan in the morning. He thought he had left the palace and returned to the palace. When he asked the old steward next to him, the old steward just said, "I didn't see Mr. Yan." Maybe Mr. Yan didn't want to disturb the master so early in the morning dream. The Supreme Emperor didn't ask any more questions. Hearing Xian Yuanyao's words, his heart sank, but his face remained calm. The palace is heavily guarded. How powerful an assassin can sneak into the imperial study and kill people? Xie Jin brushed his robe sleeves nonchalantly, and said respectfully, reporting to the emperor, "The assassin is not necessarily a martial arts master, otherwise the eunuch in charge of the seal and Master Chen would have died. The reason why the guards were killed is because the assassin had accomplices." The emperor was silent for a moment and glanced at the guards behind them. "So, what do you want to do? Search the palace?" "I dare not offend the emperor and the queen mother, so I will not go to great lengths to search the palace," Xie Jin said calmly. "I hope the emperor will give me a cup of tea, and I will leave after catching the murderer." The emperor said in a deep voice, "Where is the murderer?" "Where she should be." The emperor was speechless for a moment after hearing his riddle-like answer. "I hope grandfather will agree." The emperor looked at them and raised his hand slowly. "In a cup of tea, I want to see the assassin and solid evidence." Xie Jin bowed and agreed, and ordered the guards to guard the palace gate. He and Xian Yuanyao led 4 people into the palace garden and walked towards the inner gate of the palace wall. Wait, the emperor frowned, that's where the queen mother lives, it's impossible for a man to go in and out. Xiejin replied calmly, I never said the assassin was a man. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 550. The emperor's expression changed again, what do you mean? Reporting to the imperial grandfather, Xian Yuanyao's attitude was respectful from beginning to end. When the grandson catches the murderer, the imperial grandfather will understand everything. The grandson does not dare to offend the queen mother, and the imperial grandfather also asks the imperial grandfather to trust his grandson and Xiejin. The supreme emperor's face was as dark as water, and he guessed some possibility in his heart, and for a moment he felt angry. Seeing that he didn't speak, Xiejin didn't stop him anymore. He raised his hand to signal the 4 people to continue their action. He and Xian Yuanyao stood outside the inner door, waiting quietly. Xian Yuanyao was even in the mood to admire the complex and luxurious carvings on the inner door of the palace wall, wondering what his grandfather's reaction would be when he saw the murderer later. The supreme emperor stood on the steps of the palace, his brows solemn and silent. Time passed by just like that, and there was even more noise in the hall. An atmosphere that was too quiet always made people feel nervous involuntarily, and after being nervous, they felt uneasy. Fortunately, no matter how slowly time passes, it is still just a cup of tea. Not even time for a cup of tea. There were footsteps behind the inner door, messy and rapid. The supreme emperor's eyes narrowed slightly, staring closely at the direction of the inner door. When he saw Nanny Wei being restrained and escorted out, his pupils suddenly shrank, and his face was as cold as frost. What's going on? Before he finished speaking, he saw another person being escorted out from behind, and that face turned out to be Xian Yuanyan. Yandere, even though the emperor was used to keeping his emotions and anger a secret, he couldn't help being frightened and angry at this moment. What on earth is going on? Why are you in the Queen Mother's palace? Emperor grandfather, save me! Xian Yuanyan turned pale and shouted in panic, I was wronged. Xiejin harmed me, Xiejin deliberately framed me, and imperial grandfather knew it clearly. The supreme emperor's face was ashen and his anger was deep. What on earth is going on? The sound of messy footsteps came in a hurry. The queen mother, who had already fallen asleep but was awakened, walked out in a panic with her hair hanging behind her. She lost her usual dignity and calmness. What's going on? I caught someone in the middle of the night. Are you coming to the palace? Grandfather, the queen mother Xian Yuanyao bowed and saluted. Grandson and Xiejin have enough evidence in their hands to prove that the assassination in the imperial study is related to Xian Yuanyan and Nanny Wei. As he spoke, he took a nightclothes and a face towel from a guard next to him. These are the black clothes and face towels found in Grandma Wei's ear room. They are still stained with the splashes on them when she stabbed the palm print father-in-law. Blood stains. In the assassination case, Xian Yuanyan was the mastermind, Nanny Wei was the accomplice, and the king of Wei and the princess were the insiders, but the grandson has no evidence to prove that the king of Wei and the princess were also involved in the case. The queen mother looked at him in shock and anger. Xian Yandere and you are brothers of the same race. The queen mother Xiejin interrupted her with a slight smile, with a respectful and firm attitude. I am responsible for investigating the case, Prince Yao is just an assistant. Secondly, there are no brothers above the law, and the prince who breaks the law is as guilty as the common people, let alone young Master Yan. What he and Aunt Wei committed was a major case of regicide. Nonsense, Xian Yuanyan shouted coldly and angrily, the regent and the queen are not in the palace, how could there be regicide? The queen mother's expression changed. Master Yan, as the son of Prince Wei and a member of the royal family, risked his life to go to the imperial study room to assassinate. Could it be that he just wanted to assassinate a small eunuch with a palm print? Xiejin asked lightly. Only a fool would do such a thing. Xian Yuan sneered, isn't there still Xian Yuan Chen in the imperial study? I'm not allowed to go find him. Yandere, the Queen Mother shouted hastily. Xian Yuan was shocked and realized that he had fallen into Xiejin's trap. His face changed and he said coldly and angrily, who inside and outside the palace doesn't know that I am not in good health? Go to the imperial study to assassinate me? Mr. Xie really thinks highly of me. Xiejin smiled faintly, young Master Yan, there is no need to quibble. Since I can come to arrest you, I must be fully confident. Otherwise, I can't bear the crime, can I? I believe that the Supreme Emperor has a rough understanding of the current situation. I judge that I have not wronged young Master Yan and Nanny Wei, and I hope that the Supreme Emperor will not embarrass me, otherwise this case will be difficult to handle. The Supreme Emperor's face was as dark as water. Yandere is not in good health, but he can successfully sneak into the imperial study room and assassinate her without concealing the presence of so many guards in the palace. Do you think he can do it? Xian Yuan had just let it slip, and the emperor already knew it, but he still couldn't figure it out. How could Aunt Wei alone take Xian Yuan to the imperial study room to assassinate him? And who was he going to assassinate? It couldn't possibly be just to stab the palm print eunuch, right? Etc. Palm print eunuch? The Supreme Emperor's eyes sharpened, and he turned to look at Xian Yuan in shock. But the fact is that he did it, Xiejin calmly replied. As for how he did it, I can't say it directly in front of so many people, because it involves the secrets of the royal family. The emperor may discuss it with the Queen Mother in private. After saying that, he bowed slightly and said, Master Yan and Nanny Wei want to take them away. I hope the emperor and the Queen Mother will agree. Grandfather, Xian Yuan's face changed drastically, and he turned to look at the Supreme Emperor anxiously. My grandson is wronged. Xiejin deliberately wants to deal with me. Ever since Rong Yu from the Great Zhou dynasty took power, Dongling has been destroyed by him. Controlled by one hand, he is now bent on getting rid of me, imperial grandfather, with his wolfish ambitions. Master Yan, are you the thief? Crying catch the thief, Xiejin chuckled slowly. The regent and the queen returned to Dezhou to deal with things over there. Not long after they left, Master Yan couldn't wait to do something. Could it be that the regent forced you to do this? The previous incident with Miss Fang caused a sensation in the imperial capital and ruined the reputation of the Prince of Wei's mansion. Could it be that the regent also forced you to do this? Also, how did Master Yan treat Master Chen before? I believe. Enough. The emperor seemed to have suddenly lost all his strength. His face was decadent and powerless. He glanced at Xian Yuan without any expression, and that look was full of deep disappointment and powerlessness. Such a look made Xian Yuan feel desperate and terrified. Grandfather, take him away. The emperor waved his hand tiredly. Don't send me any more news about the Prince of Wei's mansion. I don't want to see anyone from the Prince of Wei's mansion again. The Queen Mother was startled. Grandfather. Xian Yuan's face turned pale and he looked at him in disbelief. Grandfather. Xiejin is ruthless. He will kill me. He will definitely kill me. Grandfather. The emperor didn't look at him again, turned around, and walked into the hall step by step. The back figure did have a sense of vicissitudes and old age. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix.